to start with, the first example I'm going to pick is one which is an organisation which is very dear to my heart, being very based locally, and indeed my first employer, Sheffield Museums. And for this example, we looked, because Sheffield Museums had a great track record of collecting lots of audience finder survey data. They've got a really big pool of data to have a look at. So we used that to look at some of the survey data, and particularly to zoom in on one of the segments. So a big chunk of Sheffield Museums audience is experience seekers. 1 in 5 of their visitors, roughly speaking, which means that that segment is big enough that it's it's usable, but there's room to differentiate within it. So what we did is we tagged the survey responses with the audience spectrum types, and then did some various analysis based on that. From that, we could see that there were some substantial differences between the subsegments that sat underneath the overall experience seeker label. And I know there are at least a few Sheffielders in the room who will recognise some of the dynamics going on here. So, as Anne mentioned, broadly speaking, under experience seekers, we've got the a mix between the slightly older E1 group and the slightly younger, earlier career or still student E2 group. And when we started to look at what that meant in terms of the audience for Sheffield Museums, a few different things came out. So typically speaking, across the different sites that the museums have, they have the Western Park Museum, which is city museum with a strong family angle outside the centre. There's the Graves Art Gallery, which is a visual art space, which at the top of the library, so it takes you have to go up a few stairs or take the lift to get to that one. But then there's the Millennium Gallery, which is a really big, popular thoroughfare near the station, and Kelham Island Museum as part of the recent merger with Sheffield Industrial Museums Trust and Museum Sheffield. And what we found was that the E1 group, the older group, who again were slightly more settled into life in the city maybe, were more likely to be previous visitors. They've probably been around a bit longer in the city, they've had more chance to see things, they've probably got more of an ongoing engagement with the city and its history, and they're more likely to have families, and they're more likely to be taking those to things like Western Park Museum. So we saw a bit of a skew towards previous visitors amongst that group, whereas the E2 group were much more likely to be new visitors. And if they had been, they were recent new visitors. There were fewer people saying, we've been before, but it was 5 years ago. It was very much on the newer end. Similarly, who they attend with varies. So both groups were both types were both likely to attend in groups. So they're likely to attend with other people, but those groups skewed towards attending with children for E1 and attending with other adults for E2. And interestingly, although E1 were more likely to have been to the Graves Art Gallery, E2 were more likely to attend in groups there. So again, it suggests maybe a bit of a shift where maybe people are exploring together with friends, as opposed to I don't know, maybe long-term habitual visitors making these solo trips. So we saw that very much a difference in behaviour, and linked to that, we saw quite a difference in terms of where people lived. So we could separate out between local and non-local members of experience seekers. So we looked just at Sheffield postcodes, and within those, there was quite a heavy concentration in the E1 group, in areas of S6, S7 and S8, which are like middle-class suburbs, lots of families arranged around the centre of the city. Whereas the other group with more students, there were lots in the centre and in S10, again near Hallam and Sheffield University. So very much linked to that profile in terms of being students and graduates. So what that gives us within this wider and really key group, the experience seekers, a real sense that there is differentiation in terms of motivations, in terms of interest, in terms of content they're interested, where they live, what they do, and therefore with targeted promotions or targeting particular offers to people, there are different places to look, different places to go, different things they might be looking for, and all of those can be targeted just that little bit sharper by using the second tier down.